Okay, it says we're live. Okay,
All
so
right. Hi.
hi, if there's anybody out there, but I'm sure we'll be able to catch a playback if you don't. I am here with my really good friend, Mrs. Diane Jarecki. I want to call her Ms. because she has that energy about her. But she is a Mrs. So anyway, basically, you've had a YouTube channel. You were down for a while. You have one
I've been
back
on and
up.
off YouTube for 5 years.
Yeah, but you kind of back up. You kind of resurfacing again. So why don't you let everybody know where you've been, what you've been up to, and what's ahead?
All right. Well, yeah, first off, I've been off and on for 5 years, and I've got this kind of push me, pull you relationship with YouTube. If you were a Dr. Doolittle fan growing up like I was, you know what a push me, pull you is. And um, for those who don't, it's a two-ended llama, has two heads, and so one side's always going one direction. Yeah. Anyway, um, because I'm what's called an ambivert. I'm an introverted extrovert or an extroverted introvert. So if you are both, there we go, camera, both, you are actually what's called an ambivert. And so it's always an issue for me. And it kind of all came to a head on me again, last year, because it can feel, anybody who's a creator out there knows that it can feel very stressful if you feel like you're part of a community and they feel like you are too, and trying to kind of keep up with a growing community that just exponentially explodes. You can't, there's not enough time in the day for anybody, but you feel obligated anyway. There was a lot of stress, and on top of that, we lost our two senior dogs that year. My husband lost both his parents. We had our house on the market. We were moving. And I just said, you know what? I can't do this. And rather than just hide my channel and take a break, I deleted the whole dang thing again. Because that's what I do, because I'm never returning. And then I feel, again, this is that push me, pull you. I feel pulled back into it. So if I need a break these days, I just take the break. I haven't posted a video now for a while, and my last two were really short walks in my woods ones that I did. So I've come back this time with allowing myself to breathe and to do what I can do to enjoy the channels I enjoy, not feel obligated to anything. And I actually don't watch a whole lot on YouTube these days because I've been pretty busy and I'm doing a lot of reading and studying. If you could see the pile of books behind me, you can see the bookshelves, but if you could see the pile behind me, some of which are now on loan from my niece because they're related to the permaculture farming and gardening and stuff that is now right now my big push, is to get going with that before I go back into some of my other studies. So that was the other thing, was like I really needed to try to focus on studies. The move totally killed that too. When we moved, our entire focus became moving because we bit off quite a bit with this place, much more than we realized of renovation. We bought a bigger project than we realized we had bought. Because we thought we bought a house and found out we didn't. And we spent our first 30 days moving the previous owner's stuff out of here and ours in as we made space for it, all under really tight timelines, and then had to get this ready for winter and make it a livable home. Um, so, and we still have, this is a long-term project. We have a 5-year plan as well as like the this year plan of what we want to try to accomplish in this year. We've done a lot. We've come a long way, really. Like the ceiling is still white. That's going to get painted. that's one of the projects that's got to get done. That can be a winter project. We've got other things for outdoors for the summer, spring, summer, fall here. So that's really, I've been involved in moving and renovation and trying to move into my house. Little by little, I get to move into new spaces. We just got the bathroom done. I got to unpack some stuff, not all of it. I need to get some organizers for drawers and shelves so I can unpack the rest of it and organize it. I don't want just a jumbled mess. Everything has to have its place and everything in its place. I'm a very super organized person.
And I can attest they have come a long way, because actually now me and Diane live a couple of hours away from each other, and I did manage to make it up for a visit. And at the time, they were in the midst of putting in a kitchen.
That's right. You were here before the living room really became the living room too, when we
Yes,
were still camping in the living room in the camp
right.
chairs. Yes,
Yes, we
it's
had
surrounded by
camping
boxes.
chairs. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's been fun. Okay, I did not grow up camping. My family's idea of camping was an RV.
Yeah.
Before that, it was hotel rooms when I was little, and it was just me. We went to the RV as my little sisters came along. Um, so, you know, my mom is not a tent camper. I am not a tent camper. My first experience with that was bivouac in the army, and let's just say that's not the best introduction. So I've never been a fan. And I mean, when we moved in here, we had no kitchen, no ability to refrigerate. We were surrounded by boxes and the other people's junk. And we had to, as I said, we were slowly doing that. And actually, at first, we didn't have a bathroom. And I am not the outdoors roughing it kind of gal that's used to those circumstances. And, because we had to dig a well in order to have running water and fix some pipe issues and things. I mean, yeah, it was rough. That's why I said we bit off a bigger project than we realized. This place has come a long way, baby, from what we bought. And by the time we're done, we'll have the cutest little cottage in the woods, and we're working on that. But it's nice to have a kitchen and a bathroom now, and yeah.
That's all
Heat, we had to
good.
put that in. We had to put heating
Yeah.
in time for winter. So, that's why I said, like, all my other stuff fell to the wayside. So now I'm like starting my business over, working on building both an online and a local business, and starting studies in a different way than I was before now, like different things first for a while to integrate that. So
Mm. So, I was wondering if you wanted to talk about permaculture. That's something that has caught my interest, and there was a time I was really into it and was something I wanted to do, but my plans have kind of changed. But I am still fascinated by it, and I totally love the concept. So, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
yeah, so for those who don't know what it is, permaculture gardening is where you don't pull the weeds and you work with what you have, what can grow in your local area. And then you do, like, I want to do what's called forest gardening, which you have layers. You have the canopy layer, your trees, then you have your bushes and shrubs, and then you have the rhizome layer or herbaceous layer that's down towards the ground. So you're working more with perennials and shade-friendly plants. You're not planting the manicured garden in rows that we're so familiar with. You're planting something that looks much more natural. The reason why you constantly have to weed a garden is because nature abhors a vacuum. And those weeds that you're pulling out are actually nutritious plants. One of the ones that grows the most in many of those situations is
Dandelion?
huh?
Dandelion?
No, purslane.
Persane. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's purslane.
Yeah.
Anyway, and that's actually an edible, a good,
Yep.
very nutritious, full of vitamins and stuff thing. There's
Tangy and
the idea,
nice
and I used
flavor.
to have this idea that those plants are taking away from the nutrients in the soil for your plants. That is actually completely the opposite of the truth. The truth is, those plants actually add nutrients and help keep them in your soil. So they're beneficial to the plants that you're growing. If anything, what they compete for, and I've seen a really good video on this, is they compete for the sunlight. So if anything, if you've got something smaller down in that's trying to grow up, just you don't uproot completely because you don't want to disturb your soil. What you do is you just rip off the higher portion of the plant and you put it back in as like mulch to put nutrients into the soil to create, like, there's some things that we're going to take out of here that are considered invasive. They're actually now illegal to plant in this state because of that. New Hampshire is a very conservation oriented state because most of our revenue comes from our lakes and our forests and everything. So it's very, very conservation minded. So they don't like you planting things that take over the natural flora and fauna from here, or flora specifically. Um, so there's some things here that are considered that. I'm going to chop them down and then I'm going to put them in and I'm going to put cardboard over them and sheet mulch over top of those so that they'll decay and build this up because we have a very, very sandy soil. It's a mix of very fine gravel and larger pieces of gravel and a lot of sand. In our woods, I mean, seriously, we tried trying to do a little gold panning in our streams here because so much of this is glacier fed. And black sand doesn't exist there. It's just sand. Very sandy. And it's got water running right over it. It's very sandy. Um, so to create nutritious soil, which is my first step to creating my permaculture garden, that's what I'm doing. And those invasive plants are nitrate fixers. And I think that might be why the previous owner planted them actually. Was either because, like the burning bush, because of its foliage and color, or because it's a nitrate fixer, because she has another one of those with the autumn olive.
Mm.
Those feed the birds. I'd kind of like to keep them. I've been advised by a permaculture gardener that the best thing I could do is the same thing as I'm going to do with the burning bush and turn them into a soil creator by chopping them down because they are an invasive. Um, then the other thing is what is called forest farming. Forest gardening and forest farming are two different things. So forest farming is another facet of permaculture gardening, and it is things like mushrooms, ramps, um, ginseng, golden seal, things that grow in the forest. It's planting those things on kind of, I don't want to do it on a huge, we only have 4.2 acres. And we have a 110-pound German Shepherd who loves to leap and bound and just go crazy running through the woods. And I don't want to have panic attacks that he's killing my plants. So I'm not doing it on like a large level. I just want to do it on a small level for stuff that I can then harvest and make tinctures and tisanes and things like that out of. Um, so and we want to, so there's nut trees and things like that that we want to plant, some of which are, there's already, we're pretty sure, a walnut tree here. We have a logger from the area whose son is the town forester. He sent his son to forestry school and he is on the town's conservation commission with me. So he's a very sustainable forester or logger. And he's going to come through and help us identify some of the stuff in our woods because we don't know all of these trees. My husband knew the trees in Pennsylvania, and he said the trees here are very different. They look very different. We have different species than he's familiar with, so he hasn't been able to identify trees for me. And I don't do it well from a book. Books don't help me. I need somebody to point to it, to take me over to the tree and to say, see this bark, see these, these needles on it. You're looking at this. That's how you identify that this is a Douglas fir. Okay. Or a blue spruce or a hemlock or whatever. And we have all of those on the property. We have multiple species of spruces and firs. And I've looked in the books, I've taken the book around, and it's left me just as confused as I was before. I've never been a good book learner when it comes to stuff like that. I am a much better show me and then I've got it.
Yep. Yeah, especially with plants, I think it's much. I find it's much better to like you said, to have somebody to show you the plant, and then you really understand it. And I'm not that great with trees either. They're not. I can get around and figure out that's a maple, that's an oak,
Mm.
that's a pine, that's a hemlock.
I've been able to identify some of those more
Yeah,
basic.
yeah, the
I,
basic
I know I've
one.
got red oak and red maple on here. The leaves in autumn showed us that. But I wouldn't have identified them in any other season, though.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's one thing about when you're learning to identify plants, especially like the herbs, is when they're in flower, because that's when you're sure of what they are. Is
yeah,
usually by their flower, and they don't flower all season long. So you kind of need to get to know them when they're in flower, and then be able to watch them seasonally to see. He's like, okay, I know that grows there. Now, what does it do throughout that season? And I
well, and
don't
that's why things like the red maple and the
think, yeah,
red oak versus a silver maple or a golden oak or whatever is when it's fall and you're going by the color of their leaves. But
yeah.
my acquaintance, I can't call him a friend yet, working on that. The logger, though, I'm sure he can, because
Right.
being a logger, he has to be able to know what he's pulling out. Um, the other benefit to him walking through is that he has logged the one neighboring property and he knows where the boundary is there. You have to pull those logging permits. You've got to know where your boundaries are.
Mhm.
We have a rough idea, but we're finding out that our boundaries are a little further than we thought. Our property is just a little bigger and deeper than we thought looking at the map so we'd love to get that surveyed, but that is a very expensive prospect, even just for our little property. So if we can find people who actually know where the boundary lines are because they've had it logged,
Yeah.
then, and it sounds like the other boundary owner, that they have done that in the past and they know where their boundary is too. So if somebody can show us our two surrounding properties boundaries, then we know where ours are.
Right, right.
And we don't need to pay surveyors. So we
I
can get it the cheap and free way.
4.2 acres doesn't sound and really like a lot, but when that's spread out, it's really a lot more than you realize.
Well, and it doesn't, we have the smallest property in our neighborhood, okay? At 4.2 acres, we're the smallest ones. The next smallest is like 13 point something, to give you an idea.
Right, right.
But we had 0.32 where we came from. So we have like more than 10 times what we had before. We're happy. It's enough. It's enough that the dogs are happy, leaping and bounding and going through. They love to take pack walks through the woods. They're happy. We're happy. It's all good. It's not too big to manage. Um, you know, it's certainly probably not big enough to have any of it logged, but that's okay. We don't really plan on doing that. My plan is to only go through and take out anything that's dead and needs to be pulled out so that other things can grow up and live, and then to utilize those dead logs for things like growing mushrooms.
Right, right. And they
Make
also,
use of those.
yep, they can be used in permaculture also. So,
Yes, and there's the thing, like for me, I've joined our local conservation commission for a reason. I'm very much about trying to recycle, upcycle, repurpose, find to use everything. Our ancestors didn't throw anything away. Everything was made out of natural stuff. And so, it went back to the earth if they couldn't reuse it. But for the most part, they usually found a way to recycle and reuse every single thing. Even broken pots usually found a use.
Yep.
So that's what we're trying to do, or at least what I'm trying to do. Thankfully, he's on board. Let me do my thing.
That's great. Thank you for that. I appreciate, and I'm sure when the playback, people will find it very interesting. Well, I know I do because being an herbalist and growing all that, and so that's right up my alley. And like I said, if I was planning to go in a different direction, permaculture. Okay, if I was going to be permanent myself and permanent place to be in the future, then I would be doing that. Permaculture would be up there. And I almost actually took a course, was very interested in taking a class in it, and just thought it sounded amazing. So I've
Well,
seen
I'm
people.
fortunate. I have a niece who's into it. She actually went to my older niece went to college for environmental science and sustainability and took courses in botany and things like fungi and lichen because that's her main interest. So, like, I have a
Mm.
picture of her climbing up the one hemlock to get a better shot of a mushroom when she was wearing her skirt and her long rubber boots on Easter. um, and she brought me over, like I said, some books that I've got on loan to look through and see if I want to invest in them. That were some of her textbooks and stuff, and they're fully available on Amazon. So, um, she and I have very similar interests in reading these days because I started out with being interested in herbalism, and that has grown. The things that I wanted to do when I planted my herbs back in the old house, I never got around to doing. And this time I've said, you know what, I'm going to do this because this is what I really want to do for the rest of my life.
And that's kind of, as in my recollection, which couldn't be wrong because my brain's been all over the place lately. But I think it's how we really became friends. Is you I was offering a course at the time to learn herbalism, and you accepted, and we got going on that. And then I think we just kept talking after that. And
I
then
think we were talking before that
yeah,
because it was the both of us being from New Hampshire
yeah,
originally, and the
yeah,
fact
and
that I
that
was moving back, and
yeah,
then our interest in herbalism, and then you invited me to the course, and yeah, so it's kind of been something that's been building over a couple of years now.
yeah,
I was so
yeah.
happy to get to meet you in person. That was so
I
awesome,
know it was great, and we
and
didn't.
I'm going to make it out your way. I really will.
I'm waiting.
I know. It's just right now there's so much to do here that
Yeah,
it's very hard for me to go elsewhere.
right. So I have seen somebody popping off and on. They're probably wondering if we're going to do some cards, and I thought we would anyway. But it's fun just to let people know what you've been up to since you've kind of been here and there. And I noticed that when you did put up a channel, you were like, Diane. I mean, you have been quite.
Which that actually super touched my heart that there were so many people when they found out that I was back on the air were like, "Oh my god, I'm so glad to see you've got a channel again." And that touches me really deeply because I guess I don't feel like I'm that and a bag of chips kind of thing. Uh, I guess sometimes we don't realize how other people see us and what we can mean to them.
What I find, I think, is you have a lot of knowledge, and you have a very natural, easy way of sharing that knowledge. And you don't mess around, and you're straight to the point. And that's what I like about you, and that's what I appreciate. And I would make it, find that ease of the way you explain things. I think brings people in. And that's why I think the community is really, really appreciates you, you know?
Well, that's kind of why I want to do this now with the permaculture gardening, to kind of bring that same approach and share my journey as I go, as I learn. So many channels that are about that are so well established. And I mean, they're teaching for beginners, but they're not showing that beginning because they can't, because they're too well established.
Yep.
And so I kind of figured I'm a beginner who will be showing from the beginning what I'm doing, how this is all starting, and take people through it, sharing my mistakes, sharing my successes, sharing, sharing the things I'm learning, like how this has changed my way of gardening, because I learned that I was very wrong about those other plants and what they were doing to the soil, that they're not
Whoa.
taking away the nutrition from the things you're trying to grow, they're actually adding to it.
Right. And well, that's just the culture. That's the, like it's a no, yeah, right, Heidi. That the that, yeah, putting things into little boxes, yeah.
Compartmentalization.
Thank you very much. For some reason, that word was not coming to me.
Don't you hate it when that happens?
Yes.
Well, it's part of industrial society.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, our ancestors would have gardened in a much more natural way than we do. They would have left those plants there because they would have known that they needed that to hold the soil in place and make rich, healthy soil. They
Absolutely.
say one of our biggest issues today with our food, the
Right.
reason that even organic produce isn't as nutritious as it was a couple of 100 years ago, and that actually even a couple 100 years ago, a lot of the nutrition was out of the soil. Why? Because of industrialization and civilization, and the fact that in doing so, we're kind of fighting nature.
Right.
You know,
And I have a
we're not
picture.
doing things in a natural way anymore. We're doing things in an industrial way.
Right. I have
Industrial gardening gets rid of those things and makes easy access down rows of vegetables.
right.
Natural gardening leaves them in place because you understand that Mother Nature is putting it there for a reason.
Right. I have a picture of my grandfather in his cornfield, and the grass between the rows is probably that high. I mean, that, he, at that time, this was a very early photo, probably short. I think my mom was in the picture and she was 6 or 7 years old, so it would have been like 30s or 40s. So they were still farming, kind of the old way of doing things. So he didn't kill the grass around the corn; it was planted in the grass, or
Right.
the grass was allowed to grow up. It wasn't a big deal. And my grandfather was over 6 feet high, and that corn, this was most likely not a hybrid at that time, and that corn was 2 to 3 feet over his head.
No, if it's corn, it was already a hybrid.
So it was already a hybrid then.
Yes, because corn's actually, it's a grain, and it started
Right.
as a grass thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of years
It's
ago.
okay.
It was a grass, kind of more like wheat.
Yeah.
And it has been hybrid, and it was one of the earliest hybrids that our
Mm,
ancestors made in order to create it to be the way it is now.
right.
So, yeah, it's
Yeah,
actually
it
been a
probably was.
hybrid for, well, for as long since the Paleolithic age, when we actually shifted out of that and started agricultural farming and started doing things like that, is when corn started to be developed.
Right, right, right. Well, it was native to the Americas, and they
It was
they
a grass,
are,
and they created it to be what it is. That's a
yeah,
very big misunderstanding. So is the thought that this country, when the Native Americans were the only residents here, was virgin, untouched forests. No, it was not.
it
They
was managed.
actually burned
Yeah.
forests down to create an area to garden and stuff. They practiced agriculture.
Yeah, they said that it was almost park-like when the settlers came here, because they knew about using fire, and so the forest was not full of brush, Well, and they didn't have like erratic fires because they controlled burned. And
Hmm.
so it was very much like a park with the big trees, and the forest floor was fairly clean. There wasn't
Right.
a lot of
And they would
undergrowth.
do that, and then they would pack up and they would move on to a different
Yep,
area, and then that area would regrow and new life
yep,
would come into it.
yep,
So they knew how to manage it properly
yep.
rather than just cut and destroy and, totally kill a forest, you know. And to this day, like around here, there are good loggers and bad loggers. There are
Exactly.
sustainable
Yep,
loggers who do it in a way that propagates better forest growth, or regrowth of the forest, because they understand that that's the only way to keep the industry going.
yep,
You know, the gentleman who is coming here, I mean, he's a fifth generation logger, and he's logged several of these areas, a few times in his career of logging. He's an
yep,
older gentleman, and he has logged some of these places multiple times because he's logged the stuff that needed to be taken out, and other stuff has grown, and then he's been able to go back in and do that again, and to keep that process going. And that's what a good logger does. That's what good forest management really is.
exactly. And vs what happened in my area, where I can actually see from my home, which is sad, is they clear cut.
Right.
And I don't think there was any rhyme or reason to clear cut except for greed. Yeah, exactly. And it's devastating, because that will run off. Our hills are, there was a lot of clear cutting that was done 100 or so years ago that was cleared for sheep, because New England was a very heavily sheep farming area. So they did,
Well, and
has been,
logging is one of our biggest industries. So while our forests and lakes and everything are all very much a part of our tourism revenue and draw, logging is also a big part of the state's revenue,
right, right. And
as well as your personal. Like, that's
uh,
how people, if they've got trees that are good and big and can give them some money,
yeah,
you know.
and a lot of people think, oh, the forests have been here forever, and that's not true, because, like I said, a lot of it was clear cut when the settlers came in. So
Hmm.
a lot of what they're seeing now is literally only 50 to 60 years old of forest growth.
Right.
But New England has a rapid growth cycle for trees. They grow very quickly here. The soil's not the best, but the climate is perfect for growing trees. Usually we have
Right.
ample rainfall and ample, there is seasons, but I mean, because of that, it's self-feeding, because you have the fall of the leaves and all that. So, but
It amazes me, really, like the part of New Hampshire I'm in. There's a band that comes from Maine and comes down diagonally and across New Hampshire and into part of Vermont. That is, according to Audubon, I've got a book, a book that talked about this. It is the most diverse forest in the world, literally.
wow.
And it's
But
a
that's
very
a
small band of this that comes across. I happen to definitely live in part of it. So we have the largest mix of conifers and deciduous trees anywhere in the world. It's why our leaves are so infamous or
It
famous
doesn't really
or whatever,
surprise
why
me,
leaf
though.
keeping is a season here.
Yeah.
It's in a big
Exactly.
tourism industry again, how the forest pays us. But um, so that's kind of why I need help identifying different firs and spruces. There's so much diversity within those. And then there's also the maples and the oaks and the different, there's 9 different species of oak that grow in here. I didn't know there were 9 different species of oak to begin with until I read that book. I was looking
Yeah.
through that.
It doesn't surprise me, because I've delved in a little bit, and I was like, but when it's like, that especially I can't see the forest for the trees because there's so many different types of trees. Because the more I look, the more different. And I'm like, is that an ash? Is that an oak? So we have ash, we have elm, we have, we have like I said, we
Well,
have
down where
walnut,
you're at might
we
be
have,
part of that band, by the way. You and I would have to look at that page and
right,
see if you
beech
can
nut.
identify if you're in that. Hmm?
Beech nut is one. We
Mm-hmm.
had
Yeah,
one
we
at
have that. I've got
school.
that in my.
Yeah. So there's, and these are edible. The walnuts, the beech nut,
Mm-hmm.
those are edibles. So yeah, and I think there's a lot. And then, of course, there chestnuts used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Those got wiped out early. The elms we have elms, but they don't live as long because of the Dutch elm disease. But
Yeah,
they
that's an
still,
issue.
yeah, that's an issue. They still grow 20 to 30 years. They just don't have that long, um, nice long lifespan where they grow to these beautiful. There are a few, these beautiful, huge canopies. So actually, that doesn't surprise me. Like I said,
Why it
because
surprises me is because in this area with this big diversity, we have swamp forest.
yep,
It's very, very wet.
yep.
I mean, we had a huge drought this past year, and our streams never went dry. We have a mud bog for a driveway now because we have springs underground that come up through it. So the ground here, I mean, when I walk through my woods, even without stepping in the streams, my feet are wet when I come out because it's a swamp forest. So the whole ground is wet and boggy. it's
Well, New Hampshire is known for its springs and its good drinking water,
yeah,
especially the above ground, the springs, the little
yeah,
springs that come out, not so much the
because it's
deep
glacier fed.
well. Yeah,
It's all glacier. It's mountain runoff,
right.
So yeah, when you're
Yeah,
down in the lower levels like this,
yeah. And
and
I'm down in a valley, and I'm in the more open because I'm in still active farmland. Active
yeah,
enough, so that I'm more in the open. We have more trees though than I did when I was growing up, but it
well,
doesn't take long for a pasture to succeed into forest.
where my parents and we are from Chikura down through past us to like Wakefield and stuff, we're on the largest aquifer in the world.
That shocked me. But like I said, I'm not surprised about this because I
That's why
do
the
know.
soil is so sandy here.
Yeah,
We are on a natural aquifer.
that's amazing.
So I'm it surprises me that we have the tree growth that we do, the good climate for that when we're talking a very poor sandy soil that is all swamp and bog. And it's like, wait, what? But that's
But
why
according
mushrooms are a really good prospect here in ginseng. There's things that grow well in that.
Right, and what one of our neighbor farmers told me is we have sandy soil also in some areas, and what about it is full of minerals. It's very good soil, even though it's sandy. It's not that loam that you would expect, with all the organic matter. It's because the glaciers did break down the stones, and so it's all that is sandy glacial
Minerals.
minerals. So and he said it's tests great for growing crops. Oops. Okay, you left me for a minute, but
Did
that,
I?
yeah, that's okay.
Oh, okay. And it's funny, it doesn't do that on my end.
Huh, that's weird. It must have been my end. So we've been chatting for about 40 minutes. So
I see
do
that.
we want to throw, we don't seem to have an audience, but I didn't really publicize it until last minute because I wasn't totally sure, um,
Well, as you develop
both
this
ends.
into a regular thing, people will know when to
Yeah,
find
and
you.
I know the playback will get a lot of audience too.
Yeah.
Uh, so do we want to throw some cards, maybe for each other or in general? I
Um,
mean, I did
Up
a
to
tag.
you. I've got it. I've got my Light Seers tarot handy.
Okay. I've got I've got some. I got Druid, my star. What is it? Star Terror, which I really like. It's a hybrid between Thoth and WRS, but I'm not into Thoth, but I love this deck, so I'll probably use that. But I got a couple others right handy.
Okay.
Um,
Well, and I've got my favorite, into the camera, my my favorite Oracle deck, the Wisdom of the Oracle. This is what I use for client readings for the most part, because it's very intuitive. I love this deck.
I actually like more WRS based for doing client readings because I feel like oh, excuse me. I feel like that's more to the point, or it's more, I don't know, I get more of a story from it than
And
more,
see, for me, until the Light Seers Tarot, my preference was the Tarot de Marseille, which there we go.
right, which you
Which
love.
this is
And
my newest and a very recent favorite because I love the soft coloring of this.
see, I've never been into that either for some reason. I like
Well,
the,
it's very direct. Now, when I go out to fairs,
yeah,
I do the Council of 13 that I learned from Camellia Elias's book. And I'll
yep,
tell you, it's been so accurate. I've brought people to tears who have told me, I don't have anything going on. And then I can look at them and say, well, actually, yes, you do, because here's what I'm seeing. And they're like, oh my God, you're so right. So this is actually for fairs, and was my favorite decks, my favorite system to
yep,
use for client readings until I got this deck.
the Light Seers. I've heard a lot about it. Mm,
This brings out a lot of stuff. So when I'm online, this is my online deck. Working on
yep,
the psychic hotline thing. The
yep,
Light Years is my deck for that. But if somebody wants to know, like, do you have any other messages from spirit for me or anything like that, then I'll go to pulling an oracle card, and this is the deck I'll use for that.
yep. That makes it.
So for me, it's kind of a reading wrap up for private clients, or it's a just if somebody says, is there anything, do you have anything else that I need to know, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. I used when I went out to do. Ooh, yeah, that's right. I used this a lot when I was out doing fairs
The
because
Dark
we were
Mansion. Now,
going.
see, that one's never called to me at all.
Well, we were out doing. We went to a lot of haunted houses or haunted inns and stuff. So I just felt like it kind of went with the setting because it's kind of that Victorian style and Victorian Gothic kind of like. And so I was like, it just felt like it fit the setting. It wasn't so much, and it's an RWS base, so and that's what I'm
It's funny. See,
into.
RWS was never my favorite system ever. I preferred Thoth was where I started, and
I don't have it.
I
It's
mean
up.
not the Thoth deck itself, but the Thoth system was where I started.
Yeah,
And then I did go into Rider Waite Smith. That's how I learned how to read tarot rather than having to look at the book. But it was
yep,
never my favorite system because then you're kind of locked into the images. I guess that's the one reason I like the Light Seers, because the light and the shadow are so well depicted in the majority of these cards.
yep.
Um, and really, I mean, really, it's there in all of them.
I do like the Tarot of the Hidden. No, is yeah, Tarot of the Hidden Realms.
Yes, I
That
don't even have that deck. There's a lot of decks that
yeah.
I don't have that are really popular with a lot of other people.
Well,
Because again, the Rider Waite Smith system has never been my favorite. So
right. I started with two decks, and at the time, and that's why I was having so much trouble. I had a Native American tarot that was Thoth based, and I didn't know it, right? And then I
Medicine
had,
Woman.
yeah, and then I had the Hanson Robert tarot, which was definitely R.W. Smith. And so I was trying to learn, and I had with these two decks, and I had two different systems that when you're a beginner,
Mm-hmm.
once you learn, you can understand the concept,
Medicine Woman Tarot is actually that's a Rider Waite Smith base because that was my second deck. I bought the Tarot of the Spirit by Pamela Eakin. That was my first ever tarot deck that I worked with, and Then my next one was the Medicine Woman Tarot. And like you, didn't realize I was kind of working, although they're both Golden Dawn based, there are enough differences to make it very hard to learn that way.
Yeah.
Julian Victoria talks about that. She had like a Rider Waite Smith deck in a Thoth book or something that in the book of Thoth. And that's how she learned how to read and, why she can pretty much pick up any deck and do it. It's not the easiest way to learn.
No, it's not. It's not. Like now I can
The
pick up a
Vision
Thoth
Quest Tarot, that's the Native American one that's Thoth based.
Yes, that is. But I can read with that now. I mean, I don't. But the one that I have is, what is it? I'm trying to look at the. It's called the Native American Tarot, I think. It's a real old deck. Well, I'm not young, so it's quite an old deck. But it was based on the Golden Dawn. So, but I can
The
read.
Rider Waite Smith and the Thoth are both based on the Golden Dawn.
Yeah, so I can read with both of them now. I mean, but when you're learning, it was enough to throw me off, because they like the keywords, and that to the Native American one, to the Hanson Robert, which didn't have keywords and was like, seemed like Greek to English, which it wasn't. But once I understood they were slightly different systems, then I got it.
Yeah, for me, it's cartomancy versus taromancy, and I really prefer cartomancy, which is the Tarot de Marseille. And this is so backwards to my kids, it's going to drive me nuts.
And that's what Streamlabs does. It drives it, because it is.
But anyway, the Lenormand and then the Tarot de Marseille. Cartomancy is really like, that's my favorite language for divination, shall we say.
Yeah.
And taromancy is not. But the type of readings that I end up doing on the Psychic Hotline really end up, I mean, I can read with any deck on them. I've done the Thoth, I've done the Tarot de Marseille, I've worked with the Lenormand on them, everything. But my best readings have been with this deck. And I've gone back to throwing a Celtic cross for most of that now, too.
Yep, we get more out of it.
Is not my favorite thing to do. My favorite is like when I go out to fairs and I throw the Council of 13 with Tarot de Marseille. That's my favorite reading to do.
Nice. So do you want to pick a topic, or so that I don't know if I really want to do a reading for me like live.
Yeah, I don't know that I want to do that either. I was kind of more enjoying the let's just talk about.
Oh, we can fit it. We don't have to throw any cards. That's this. We can do. It's our time, and I think people will find it very interesting. Catching up with you and talking about forestry and permaculture, and how unique this New Hampshire really is. I just wish it would get its politics online, but that's a whole
We're not
nother.
going to even. Yeah, no.
We're not going there.
No, we're not going to go there.
But
it's an interesting state as far as a lot of it has come into the 21st century, and yet there's a lot of stuff that's not. And I like it that way. I like that mix of the old ways and the historic ways blended with the modern ways.
Yeah,
that resonates with me. I mean, I'm an old style girl. Like, I could very happily go back to the 80s before computers and cell phones and be a very happy person. Even though the way I make my living is online now.
Right. Right. Yeah, I hear you, though.
I'd find a way.
Yeah, I like that. I miss that in-person reading.
Right?
Sitting
I know. I do
across the
too.
table
That
from somebody else.
connectivity in person,
Yeah. Not
we
that you
lack
can't.
that now.
Yeah, not that you can't do a good reading online. It can be just
very
as
good readings
amazing.
online, but I like them in person a lot better.
Yeah,
My
me
favorite.
too.
And that's what I
Definitely.
can't wait to get my office set up. That's our big project for this year is to get my office done. But I've got to clear all the junk off of it first. We got a long way to go. We got to do that, and then it was built as a porch originally, as a porch roof. The floor to my office was originally the porch roof, so it's at a slant. So we have to level that, paint the walls, do a little bit of shoring up of some stuff. I've got furniture that I want to paint. So like right now I'm in our hallway. So the bookcase you see behind me, we were building a weight-bearing wall and I decided it was a great place to put in shelves and create a bookcase.
Because Diane
And my
loves
laundry
books.
is behind me. The bathroom is in front of me. So this is not the greatest working space. And I really can't wait to get my office. So right now, that's why like everything I'm doing is online because I can't really bring clients into this yet. Um, and like I don't have the ability to close a door and have the privacy and quiet that I need. So, it's can't wait for the
But
day that I can run laundry and work because I can close the door.
yeah, there you go.
Because
So
right
I
now
was
it's behind me.
right.
I cannot run laundry while I'm working.
So I was thinking of maybe a question we could ask about New Hampshire. I do just want to end with a little bit. So I was trying to think what would be a good in general. Um,
For New Hampshire?
yeah, I know I'm strange, but I love being strange and different.
I'm
That's
with
because
you
it's
on
over
that, and
here.
I think that's a New Hampshire trait right there. I think New
That
Hampshire itself likes being a little strange and different, and so do most of the people in it.
how about will there since we talked about it, it really is a tourist destination from the mountains and stuff. So maybe we could ask, will this be a good tourist season for New Hampshire?
We can do that.
I think that's pretty in general without getting too in depth or in deep.
All right.
So I'll let you go first if you're ready. And
All right.
I'm hearing 4 cards, so I'm going to draw 4.
You know what? I'm going to let you do the tarot,
Okay.
and I'm going to pull an oracle card on it
All righty. That will work.
because we are fast approaching being on here for an hour. So rather than both of us do tarot on it,
That's all right.
I could also throw some Lenormand on it, but I'm going to go with the oracle deck and see.
Okay. So I'll do tarot and then I'll do the tarot. I've got it laid out. I've got kind of got my message here. So this way, that way. I got the 5 of Cups to start off with. So to me, that's showing there's a lot of emotional issues to overcome, to be cleared out. Overall, it looks really promising, though. And then these two kind of go to, oh, please. We got the 9 of Wands. So we got a lot of energy, a lot of clearing, a lot of defensiveness that I'm sensing that kind of needs to be let go of before we can move forward because this is interesting, right? So it sounds like there's some obstacles here with these 2 cards. I'm feeling like defensiveness and emotional. But then the last 2 cards I got are Pentacles, which, and we got the 2 of Pentacles and the Queen of Pentacles. Oh, it's back. Yeah, here we go. Sorry about that. This is difficult. It's like, uh-huh.
Okay,
So,
so anyway, Two of Pentacles and the Queen.
and the Queen of Pentacles. So I always think about the twos of making a choice, right? So
Well, that looks kind of as above, so below to me, too, in a way.
It is the that's the wrong card. It is very reflective. It's all you know what it kind of reminds me of is those hourglasses, like the sand. You flip
Mm-hmm.
it one way, and then but it still does the same thing.
Yeah.
The gravity falls to the bottom. So I always think about choice or indecision too, because
Mm-hmm.
some decks it's the teeter totter, some decks it's the juggler. Um, so it's like, I feel like there's got to be a decision made, but it looks like it's going to be a favorable decision because we got the Queen of Pentacles, and that's all abundance, resources, you know. Uh, I haven't really looked at her. It's kind of actually reflects, in a way, it reflects the state herself. If we think of her as feminine, which I do, it's very, it's very hard, and to get the lighting too, because you got to turn it just right. But she almost reflects the state to me. So this is showing to me that she's going to shine. We got light, and
Mm-hmm.
in the pinnacle. So I also, as I read the image, especially if something in the image pops out of me, and what's popping out is a star, the shining light, the beacon. That she is, no matter what. It almost is like no matter what choices are made, she still has the shining light, and that's probably her natural beauty that will draw people no matter what decision is made. So, and
Well,
so,
and so with the wisdom of the oracle, the first card that I got, because I pulled three, was round and round. And to
ah,
me, this is kind of speaking to the fact that there are a lot of people who come here repeatedly. They have vacation homes here, camps, and they come in round and round, year after year after year.
this is
Um,
true.
but then the next card was chaos and conflict. So I feel like there's still some residual to the obstacles, as you said, and
Yep.
the things that need to be cleared. That there's still a little bit of that, you know, fear and everything from these last 2 years. And I'm not going to go into my opinion on all of that, but that there's some chaos and conflict around that because there are
Yep.
people with different points of view on it. And there's just a lot of chaos and conflict, shall we?
That works.
Left all that glitters. And
Yeah.
so the thing to remember that things aren't always as we perceive them either.
Mm.
So while it may either not seem or seem, either way, to be a successful season, I feel that it's going to be.
Yep.
That whether we see that reality or not, it truly is.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, because her resources are so beautiful that it's a beacon for people.
yes. And it's
Yeah.
funny because, again, like that shining and stuff, the
Yep.
glittering here. So, those two kind of seem to reflect each other. So, I feel like
Yep.
the reading actually like meshed well.
Yeah, I do too.
Why I love this deck.
That's a sweet, that's a nice oracle.
It is. Like I said, this is my absolute favorite oracle deck for using for like public readings and stuff because the messages to me are just so dead on.
Yeah,
And
I think I'm looking
it's
for
needed.
another deck in Oracle, but I have to be careful I don't get too many.
This is one I highly recommend, really. I mean, I've trimmed mine and I've edged it.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, there's a lot of. Actually, I'm looking for. It's not that big. Well, you trimmed it, you said so.
mhm. Yeah, it actually comes with a white border, which really isn't bad.
Yeah.
It's not the white border that I trimmed it for. It's because it had gold edging. The newer version of it does not have the gold edging, and I honestly wouldn't trim the newer one.
This deck has gold edging.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of gilding. So I'll either sand that stuff off and go over it with ink pads, or I will trim it off, especially if there's a white border. Got to think about those things.
Right,
Building, it
right.
gets all over my hands and it wears off the card. I'm not a fan. I'm just really not.
It doesn't seem to. I haven't. Well, I haven't worked with it that much to really, put it through its paces. But so far, I haven't had that. Um, some decks that I did with marker, though, it's like scrub, 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 because I was getting blue ink all over my hands.
Well, I don't. That's why I don't use Sharpies. When I edge my decks with a marker, usually what I'll use is the ones by starts
I
with
don't.
P.
Oh, I don't know, but I know
But
Sharpie
anyway,
was
they're better. They're
Mississippi.
more of an art marker. There's art markers that I use instead of Sharpies that are much better. But you have to watch. The ink pads are better for some because they don't bleed. Some
Yeah.
decks, if you like the Thoth deck, if you use a marker, it'll bleed. You have to use ink pads on those.
Yep. Yeah.
Um,
I think it is that way. Depends on the
yeah.
deck. Yeah. So
Ideally, if you have one of the artist cards to a deck, I love decks that include those because that gives you a card you can play with because you're not going
yes.
to use it in the reading. you know,
Exactly.
Yeah, when you have the any kind of extra cards that are like the intro
Yep.
to the deck card or
Yep.
the artist card or whatever, you can use those to play with different things and see, if it bleeds or not.
Right. Right. Right.
Because
So
some do. Like I have
like
Mags's Oracle, her tree Oracle deck
yep.
there, and she edged hers. And when I tried to edge mine, it bled like crazy.
Yeah.
So
This is my Vision Quest, and I had this like I took a scrubbed it because I was getting it all over my hands when because I trimmed that I just didn't like the white, and
yeah,
I don't
and
like
that's
keywords, and I can work better without the keywords, so that's why I trimmed it way down like that. But I like the size. I love the
yeah.
size of that now. So we've been an hour, so I think we should wrap up. But I had a blast, um,
You had a good time.
and I
Yeah.
enjoyed
We've got to
that
get
reading.
together in person again. I told you
I know.
one of the Wednesdays this month I said, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to make it this month or not. But I will. I will get over there to visit you.
Okay, so we'll say goodbye to
Um,
everybody, and we can talk a little bit, and then so bye everybody. Leave
bye.
a hopefully like, comment, and subscribe when you listen to this. I appreciate it. Bye.
Bye.